good afternoon where you are. Well, Villainous, I know you're in Australia, so it's probably like 6 o'clock in the morning for you. So thanks for joining us. Everyone, we have a fantastic panel. We've got Kalam, who's going to be doing a presentation for us. We've got JC and Odon, and today we're going to be talking about what is the contribution of Ethiopia, Abyssinia, to the foundation of Islam. And Kalam has a very, very solid thesis. I think there's some fascinating information there. The historical record is sound, and we're going to talk about that. So, yeah, Kalam, thank you for coming on. Really grateful. So please introduce yourself and tell everyone what we're going to be talking about or arguing about today.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. I've been watching your shows for quite some time now. I've seen, the great Odon LaFontaine here with you. So I'm like very honored to be in, the company of such great giants and titans in this information. Myself, I've been running a YouTube channel called Titans TV for the past, 12, 13 years. And the whole premise of the YouTube channel was to provoke people to actually think consciously about whether it's religion, history, philosophy, science, whatever it is. We're just going to be here to just stimulate thought. I went down to Speaker's Corner and we had fantastic conversations and discussions down there. And it's at that time, it was dominated by Islam, Muslim, Christian polemics and apologetics. And I was like, okay, let me dip my foot into this information and learn a bit more about Islam. And from that standpoint onwards, I kind of got fascinated from the historical elements of the religion of Islam. I don't really care too much about the religion and the faith-based conversations, but just the history of it, what actually transpired, to create such a phenomenon that is almost a 2 billion follower religion today. Like, why? How did it start? Why did it start? Why are these people so, I wanted to say militant, but that's the wrong choice of words. Why are they so determined? I have to give it my hats off to them. They are very committed to their religion. Most of us, I don't think we could wake up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning every single day to perform a prayer ritual, fast 30 days straight. So I give my hat off to them for doing what they're doing. I can't say that I agree with everything that they do, but I understand the sentiments of where they're coming from.
Right.
So, and then again, let me just go into this. So with the Abyssinian side of things, I started actually delving into it and learning about the history of it. And I asked myself the simple question of what were the Africans doing during this time period? And to my pleasant surprise, I was like, oh, wow. Oh, so they were actually here in Arabia during this time period. Hold on. I thought that from the Islamic narrative, they were just all slaves. Oh, no, they weren't just all slaves. They were actually ruling Arabia in the 6th century, even before that. But let's just start from the 6th century. They were ruling in Arabia, and they were the ones that were responsible for spreading Christianity in Arabia during that time period as well. And it's just very fascinating just to see that there was so much, Abyssinian African elements that nobody was talking about. Nobody at all is talking about, apart from a few people just making small mentions here and there. And I was like, wow, let me get into this, learn more about this. And it's just been a fascinating discovery ever since.
Yeah, when I raised the Ethiopic influence on Islam, and also just how much of it is in the tafsirs, how much of it is in the seerah, people were like, yeah, that's not important. That's not important. Which is interesting because there's a real strong influence. And then also, the first hijrah, his midwife and the woman who raised him, it's at least according to the story, and so on. And there's so many things. And then everyone's like, no. Before 570, there was nothing, a vacuum, just a black hole. And then everything happened in Iraq. That was the current story. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And then maybe we can just go to Odon. So welcome, Odon. Your thoughts and what made you join us today?
Your invitation at first. This is why I joined, and I'm always happy to discuss interesting hypotheses and theories about Islam's origins. And as for this Abyssinian angle, I was always I've been amazed by the work a friend of mine has done on the geopolitical aspects of Islam's origins. The guy, his name is Habib Tawa. He's a French-Lebanese scholar, and he wrote several papers on this matter. And in one of these, he discusses the role of Ethiopia or Abyssinia as one of the key players with the two empires, of course, with Persia and Byzantium, one of the key players during this time. And he brought to my attention a very interesting point that I haven't seen elsewhere. Is that the so-called Islamic conquest of Egypt was done by an Arab warlord, Amr ibn al-As, and he had with him Ethiopian troops. And this is something very interesting. It tells us that there was a connection with Ethiopia. And like you said, Kalam, the Africans, they were involved in the rise of Islam. There is something at play here. And we have echoes of this in the Islamic tradition. We have weird tales about links and connections between Ethiopia and Meccans, but it cannot be because there was no Mecca at the time. So these echoes must echo something real.
Yeah,
I don't see the point of inventing stories about connection with Ethiopia.
Well, Aksum was the fourth biggest empire in the world at the time. And then everyone goes, it's a mystery. Where did they get the Bible from in Arabia? But these guys took their Bible with them. Simple. It was in Ethiopic. And Muhammad, according to the legend at least, he spoke two languages, Arabic and Ethiopic. And then hold on, we forgot about JC. JC, welcome.
Hi. Well, it's thank you very much for having me on this one. This is not my area of expertise. I try to focus on the Quran as much as possible, but certainly we all try to understand what happened with the history. For me, the attraction towards what happened and whether the Abyssinian Empire had anything to do with the origins of Islam is that Islam couldn't appear from the Hijaz. There was nothing going on over there. Mecca is not attested until the 8th century, so we know that is a complete fabrication. So if everything had happened in the north, maybe they would have created the whole traditions, the whole narrative about some place in Iraq or some place near Jerusalem or Jerusalem itself. But instead of that, they created this other story, which one could argue maybe they just wanted to put it in the middle of the desert where there are no witnesses. But it is also quite plausible that the book originates from the north and whatever movement was appeared in the north with the book, but it is the narrative that actually appears in the south and starts to make its way north, because after all, Islam takes many hundreds of years to be written. In fact, they are still writing the narrative. So that's why is that curious thing that there were a lot of people in the south and we ignore that entirely when we have words in the Quran that come from that region and all of these different hadiths that mention quite a bit about that region. So, and after speaking with Kalam, it seems quite plausible that when they were building this character we called Muhammad, they could have copied from different blueprints, different actors, and Kalam seems to have found someone who fits the profile quite well.
Yeah. Let me actually start off by saying, I'm always curious to just like wonder why we as people who I would assume love history start off from like a historical standpoint and ask very historical questions, such as, let's just ask a simple question of the name Muhammad. Where does it come from? Where do we first find it attested in history, etc., etc.?
You want to share your screen at all? Because you can, of course, we can share your screen, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'm just gonna. This is just a side point. The first time we actually get introduced to the name Muhammad or the consonants MHMD within inside of the south, within inside of Arabia itself, it's in the 6th century, and it's a reference to the deity of Christians. MHMD. If I don't know if anybody knows this, there is a inscription JA 1028. It's the inscription name, and that's the first time we see the mention of the word Muhammad or MHMD. Mahmed, you can pronounce it however you want, because we don't have the vowel systems to know where it is. And it was said to be the name of a Christian, the Christian name for God. It's an alternative of saying Rahmanan. So we find that there within inside of South Arabia. We find other mentions of this Muhammad or that same, MHMD within inside of Syriac works, speaking about the Christians who got martyred by Joseph Zul Nun. We find that there is a lady, a Christian martyr. Her name was also called Mahmida. We find that other Christians within inside of the Islamic literature talks about Christian bishops that were also called Muhammad. We find that they were the conquering, those who done an expedition into Mecca, according to the narrative from the Islamic traditions, were the Abyssinians. They came in, and the leader of them was Muhammad as well. So we find all of this within inside of the literature, but nobody thinks to say this individual Muhammad may come from the south. This individual may be a Christian, since it literally has a theophoric name. The God's name, theonym, is Muhammad or Mahmed, and the person who is the prophet or the person who's carrying the name is called Muhammad also. Nobody, puts those two things together and say, oh, this person must either be South Arabian or Abyssinian and come from a Christian background. So it's like always curious to me, why don't anybody do that? But anyways, we move. Let's actually bring up the presentation. Give me a sec. I understand. Let's proceed.
So everyone, Kalam's channel is on the screen right now. I've pasted his @link, Kalam L. If you look in the description, you'll find the links to Odon's channel, JC's channel, and Kalam. So do go over there, do subscribe as well, please. Right, and so the links are in the chat right now to Kalam if you want to have a look at his channel.
Okay. So today's presentation is the Abyssinian origin. And we'll be discussing Abraha and Muhammad, and specifically going through CIH 541 inscription. Now, for those of you guys who are new to myself and what I do, I'm just going to quickly give you a recap of what I've put forward. And over here, it says here, there was an actual historical Muhammad. Okay. Most times we ask the question, is Muhammad a myth? Did he exist or did he not exist? And I'm here to say, yes, there was a historical Muhammad. But the legendary Muhammad of the Islamic tradition narrative was actually based on this historical Muhammad. So I don't say that the Muhammad of faith or the Muhammad of the traditions exist. I'm talking about the historical Muhammad. This Muhammad existed within the 6th century. It goes on to say that the apparent split between the historical and the traditional Muhammad was caused by the numerous vying political parties and propagandists inventing, fabricating, and suppressing stories and reports to further their own agendas. You can go back into other presentations to find more information on this, but I want to just go through this real quickly to get you guys up to speed of where I am today. Again, the second part of the thesis is the Abyssinian king, which is very important because
you don't have to rush through anything, right? You can take your time. I mean, if you have the time in the future, we can always do a part 2. I mean, it'll be great to have you all back, and so you don't have to rush. There's no pressure on you.
Yeah, no, definitely. When I say rush, I am how can I put it? I am tired of I'm tired of actually going into depth and details.
Okay.
Specifics. So I would like to just do this, give an overview, and then afterwards we can have questions and critiques, etc., from the comment section and also from the panel members as well. So just to quickly get you guys up to speed of what I've put out there. The second part is the narrative of the legendary Abyssinian king known as the Negus that supported Muhammad was based on the historical king Abraha, who supported the historical Muhammad. The Umayyads suppressed and obscured the historical Abyssinian king's identity and narrative to further their own political agenda. And then Ibn Ishaq further solidified the obscurity and demonization by inventing the mythos that Muhammad was born in the year of the elephant, causing a chronological paradox. Okay. Now, I've done this presentation on DCCI's channel as well as on Pafanda, where we discuss, what does Santa Claus and Muhammad have in common? Apart from them both being legendary figures that flew into the heavens.
The sky on a magic animal?
Yes, on this magical, mystical beast. Apart from all of that, they were both birthed out of historical figures. So Santa Claus was birthed out the 4th century Christian bishop from Byzantium, Turkey to be specific, Saint Nicholas, whereas Muhammad was birthed out of the 6th century Christian bishop from Abyssinia. I should also put was also sainted, and I will call him Saint Muhammad also. So just to get you guys up to speed. But you know what? That was 2025 information. I want to just put forward some real. Yeah, that's the guys. The one that actually punched Arius was Saint Nicholas himself. Yes. So now unpacking the Abyssinian origins. What I would like to focus, hopefully for the New Year's, because we have a new channel called Abyssinian Origin on YouTube, and we'll be just going straight into my research on this particular field. And again, we've got a website called the Abyssinian Origin of Islam, and on there I'll be posting up articles weekly. Weekly there as well.
You know what? Obviously, you must know I did the monotheism series a few years ago, and I covered this whole Abyssinian origin. I started with that, in fact, in my series. Was that part of how you stumbled on this, or? I mean, because there's probably stuff I haven't unpacked. There's more stuff for me to go research there, I believe, that might be helpful. Yeah,
definitely. I'll definitely check it out. I wrote a PDF 11 years ago called The East African Origin of Islam.
Oh, wow.
And then I've revisited it again, and I've started to refine it. And now it's The Abyssinian Origin of Islam. So again, let's go back to it. On this channel, the objectives are unpacking the Abyssinian Arabian context of the Quran, Muhammad's life, and then present scholarly works on the 6th century Aksum, Himyar, and Habesha rule. Now, again, I'm going to say I apologize for not actually going in depth because it takes quite a while to just like build it up. But I'm just going to put out the information there for you guys, and then I'm hoping that, again, as I said, you guys can ask questions inside of the comment section, and then we'll get those things answered. So I've taken this slide directly from Dr. George Hatke, and he does phenomenal work. He's from Vienna University, phenomenal work on South Arabia, and he started to go push more into the Islamic side as well. So like, if you really want to know where most of my information comes from, it'll be individuals like this fellow, George Hatke, as well as Christian Raban, as well as Iwona Gadja. They do phenomenal work as well. So over here, it's just showing you that the empire that this Ethiopian king of Himyar had, which is Abraham, and it stretched all the way from the north from just bottom of the Roman territory all the way down to the south, all the way into the east, into Iraq, etc. I'm just going to quickly read through his slides. It says here, having defeated rebels on the home front and consolidated his hold on Himyar, Abraham spent the 550s restoring Himyar's Arabian empire through a series of military campaigns. In so doing, he curbed the power of Ma'ad, a loose conglomerate of Arab tribes based in Central Asia. At its maximum extent, the empire created by Abraham extended as far north as the borderlands of the Roman and Sassanid empires, and stretching from the Hijaz in the west to the Persian Gulf in the east. With only Oman remaining under Sassanid rule, most of Arabia was ruled by an Ethiopian Christian within a mere 2 decades of Muhammad's birth. So again, I just wanted to give you guys a quick overview, because when we're discussing history, we need to talk about two main things. It goes on into more, but two main things is chronology, what time frame are we discussing, and geography. And right now we can see the geography of this individual, the ruler of this whole empire, the Arabian Peninsula, which is Abraham. We can see it right there. So we don't have to think like, oh, what happened in that time in Jahiliyyah? No, we know that there was an Ethiopian king that was ruling and spread Christianity and conquered all of those different regions and spread his religion in those regions. Cool.
Just 1 second, just before you move on, if you don't mind, just
Mhm.
to tell the audience, in case that they are not very familiar with the map of actual like Islam, like the narrative, what we have on screen is pretty much the region that was said to have been conquered by the Muhammad of the narrative before it went to Abu Bakr. So it's pretty much that region plus Oman on the right.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, agreed.
And Kalam, can I jump in? When you,
Yeah.
you talk about an Ethiopian rule, was it a tight rule? Because Arabia was known to be unruly, very difficult to rule because maybe a conqueror can establish outposts in some regions, but he cannot control the whole of the territory.
Yeah, so we'll go into, let me go into this slide over here. This slide kind of shows you it. I will jump down to okay, cool. So over here, it talks about the different areas that he ruled. I can't actually, right here, it starts off over here on number 6, line number 6 over here. It says that he is the Malik of Sabah, and it goes through all the different areas that he is a ruler of. So it talks about he's the ruler of Sabah, he's the ruler of Zuredan, he's the ruler of the Hadramat, he's the ruler of Tiama, he's the ruler of the Arabs in the highlands and the Arabs on the coast as well. So there's different regions that he is a ruler of or king over. So there's different communities. So there is the Sabians that he rules over. He is the ruler of the Himyarites, which is another region that he's a ruler of. The ruler of the Hadramat, which let's see if we can just show you over here. So you've got these different regions that he's the ruler of. Over here is Saba. Over here is Himyar. Down here would be Hadramat. And then he's saying he's the ruler of Tihama over here. And then he's the ruler of, it further goes on, talks about he's the ruler of Ma'ad and so forth. So these are the different communities he's the ruler over. And he set over them akales or princes of those communes who would basically be underneath him. Or we would say that he sets up a Khalifa who would also come back to him. And obviously during that time period, he was battling a lot to keep control of those different regions. So he had to have a fight with the Kinder tribes. He had to have a fight with the Ma'ad tribes. He was battling a lot of the time just to keep control of it, because as you said, they were quite unruly at times. Okay, so jumping over here to where it's highlighted, I just wanted to show you how he styled himself. So he styled himself as being the king. Over here, this is written over here in the Sabaic language. He is the king of the Agazi, which basically means free or independent, and Romaeus. Okay, and now there's several different ways we can translate that. I'll just give you the how can I put it? The word for word translation, and then we can actually see what it could possibly mean. So the word for word translation of that is the king, independent, Rome. Okay. Now, but what does that actually mean? Now, he's basically saying that he is when we use the term of Rome or Romaeus in ancient times or in late antiquity, it could denote somebody who is from the Roman Empire. It could denote somebody who is like a Roman soldier, but it also denotes that a person is a Orthodox Christian. So I'll just read down here. It says here, however, the term Romaeus as a self-designation did not only or primarily mean Orthodox Christian. The same person could be simultaneously acknowledged as an Orthodox Christian and not be acknowledged as a Roman. And nobody would come to the idea to deny Romanus to a heretic like, say, Sergius of Constantinople, or for that matter, the Emperor Heraclius himself. So right here, he's basically designating that he is a Orthodox. This is how you would say an Orthodox Christian. So he's basically saying that he is the king of the autocephalic Orthodox Church in this particular line right here. And then after that, he talks about he is the king of the whole empire of the different regions that he rules. And this is very, very important. This is the reason I highlighted this on this inscription itself. It's very important because some scholars are in conversation with each other, or having debates with each other to say, what religion did he belong to? Because what was he? Was he a Miaphysite Christian like the rest of the Ethiopian Empire? Or did he convert to something else? Did he convert to Nestorianism? Did he convert to the Chalcedonian disposition as well in terms of the Christology? And in here, he's being very specific to let you know that he would classify himself as a Orthodox Christian, hence the term Romaeus. All right. And in that, there is the role of the monarch within that. And a monarch, or the emperor, like Justinian, just like Constantine, they had a particular role over their empire. And I'm just going to quickly just talk about it real quickly. Talks about his administrative influence, the governor of councils in fourth of orthodoxy, not head of the church, but he has powers to choose patriarchs and bishops, etc. So I just wanted to really highlight that, just to put it in there for you guys to kind of know. And if you wanted to find out some more information on that, the king and autocephaly in the Byzantine era, you could find this right here. Down here, autocephaly reconsiders civil authorities as autocephaly making factors. And that's on page 4, and you can just find some more information. But as I said, so I want to go through it real quickly, because we can spend a lot of time just dissecting, especially when you go into the actual inscriptions. You can take a long time just digging into it to figure out what scholars saying about this inscription, what are the translations, what does this mean, etc. I just want to go through it real quickly, and then if there's any more conversations on that, we can definitely bring it up later on. So again, back into the inscription over here. So this is the CIH 541 that is going to be, featured quite heavily, because I want to go straight into what was going on in the 6th century and what are the archaeological remains, what are the contemporary sources, what are they talking about? And then from that, we can unpack where does Islam actually originate from, okay? So over here, we have the Archbishop being consecrated. So there's Archbishop consecration and a diplomatic conference that's taking place within inside of this particular inscription. And it starts off on 64, line 64, and it works its way down. So it says here, after having sent out the summons and submitted the Arabs, Abraha entered the city of Marib and consecrated the church of Marib, since there was a priest, the abbot of his monastery. And in there, it talks about the king returning and his chaos, or the princes with him. So different people from the Arabs that he ruled came into the city as well. And then after that, we have ambassadors of the Negus from Ethiopia attends him. We have the ambassador of Rome attends him. The king, the diplomatic commission of the king of Persia, as well as various different Arab rulers. So you have Mudhiran, the envoy, and then you also have Jabala, the sons of Jabala, so Harith, son of Jabala, and Abu Karib, the son of Jabala. So those two ruled up in the Ghassanid area of Syria. They ruled there. And then you have the Lakhmid, which is Mundhir, who ruled kind of like near Iraq regions as well. So all of these individuals attended him into the city of Marib, which is the capital city of the Sabah, or the capital city of his whole empire itself. And we would assume they would have met this particular bishop as well. And they had how can I put it? They had a lot of resources being spent on this particular affair. If we go down to 114 of the inscription, line 114, it talks about since that day he set out his expedition, dedication of the church, as well as the repairs on the 3 pillars. The dam amounts to 50,800 and 1/6 of the flour, and so you could tell that they spent a lot of money, a lot of resources. There were feasts that were taking place as well during that time period. Now, I brought this up because this is the key point in actually identifying where the Muhammad story kind of started from. And it all starts from this inscription. I know you're going to say, like, how? I don't see it. Where does it happen? Let's get into it right now. So now over here, we talk about Abraha's archbishop. Okay, Abraha's archbishop is the one that was consecrated over here on the Marib Dam. But let's actually see, what does the sources say about this particular incident? Now we have two sources that we're going to actually delve into. We have a source from the Greek Orthodox, from Greek Orthodoxy, speaking on this particular time period. And then we also have, the Islamic Arabic records speaking on this particular time period. So it says here, to the Christ-loving King Abraha of the Homerites, many efficient and pious in good years. And they say this, as to a new king 10 times. And again, they exclaim, saying, to Elabasab. Wow, doing these names is hard. Elisabaham, even though it's El Sabah, and Abraham, our most pious Christian, Christ-loving kings, many years. To our most holy Archbishop and Shepherd, Gregentius, many peaceful, healthy, and complete, holy and good years. When the army had exclaimed this, the king returned into the place and went to a meal, offering rich presents to the army. So, just to give you some context, this is written in the life and works of Saint Gregentius. Gregentius is not his actual name; it's a name that they gave to him, but that's a story for another day. And it's talking about the choosing of the bishop, the choosing of the king, and celebrating a particular mass and feast based upon this appointment of this new king and this new bishop. That's from the Greek Christian records talking about Abraham and that time period. Then we have a similar story discussed with inside of the Islamic records. And it says here, with Abraham, there were some Arabs who had come to seek his bounty. Among them, Muhammad ibn Khuzai, with a number of his tribesmen, including a brother of his called Qais. While they were with him, a feast of Abraham occurred, and he sent to invite them to the feast. Now he used to eat an animal's testicles, so when the invitation was brought, they said, by God, if we eat this, the Arabs will hold it against us as long as we live. Thereupon Muhammad got up and went to Abraham and said, O king, this is a festival of ours in which we eat only the loins and shoulders. Abraham replied that he would send them what they liked, because his sole purpose in inviting them was to show that he honored them. Then he crowned Muhammad and made him Amir of Mudar and ordered him to go among the people to invite them to pilgrimage at his cathedral, which he had built. Okay. Now, two different stories, I would say, is discussing the same event. I'll actually say, no, there's three different stories discussing the same event, because we have the inscription that's discussing this event. We have the Greek records discussing the event, and then we have the Islamic records discussing this event. And each of them is talking about the consecration of this new appointed bishop. Kalam, how did you get that? And we don't get that from the Islamic records. Well, in the Islamic records, it talks about Abraham building a cathedral. And I always say, do you know what separates a cathedral from normal churches? It's the cathedra. It's the chair, the throne, the kursi even. That is the main factor right there, is the actual throne that the bishop sits upon. And this whole crowning of Muhammad is the consecration ritual that takes place when you ordain a bishop. And then afterwards, he ordains him and tells him to go about and to invite people to do, preach amongst the people and invite them to his cathedral, which he had built. This is what was taking place with inside of that. Obviously, if you don't have the context, you won't understand that. Furthermore, the greater context of this was during that time period in the 6th century, there was no bishops that were sent for 23 years to South Arabia, to Himyar itself. The reason being, because of the whole Chalcedonian, basically the Chalcedonian stuff had come in, and all the bishops had to be aligned with Chalcedonian, the Chalcedonian creed, the Chalcedonian statements. But they were staunch Miaphysites, so they wouldn't accept any bishop that would have come in that was Chalcedonian. But for some reason, you know, all the records say, but for some reason, 23 years later, after Caleb's reign, you know, this is during Abraha's reign, a bishop came in. But nobody's asking the questions like how, why, what was this bishop? Was he Miaphysite? Was he Chalcedonian? What was going on? How? What happened? And we'll find out that, of course, Abraha had a good relationship with the Byzantine king. Abraha, as you can see from his inscriptions, claims to be a Romaeus, which means he's orthodoxy. And then he brings in this new bishop to be part of his new, orthodox version of Christianity. And again, over here, the Greek records clearly shows that there was an archbishop that was being consecrated and coming in. And there's the whole meal story. All that is just literally, it's all there within the side of the inscriptions, within inside of the Greek records, and within inside of the Islamic records. The major thing is, out of all of this, is that from the Islamic records, we find out that this individual's name is actually called Muhammad. And that is like the ticking point right there to be like, hold on. So there was a Muhammad who was a religious leader in the 6th century that went around with Abraha, who conquered the whole of Arabia, unified them into a single polity, and spread a different form of Christianity, or different form of Christianity within inside of the whole of the Arabian Peninsula. That sounds very familiar with another story that we hear 50 years or so later on, where there was another individual called Muhammad that was aligned with an Ethiopian king called the Negus, who conquered the whole of Arabia, united them under a single religion called Islam, supposedly. Okay, it's the same story that's been retold later on, which kind of messed up with the chronology that we just don't put the two and two together. Now, if there's any questions, let me know. But let me just further this as well. So Abraha's archbishop, according to the Greek Eastern Orthodox account, he is said to be a brightly shining prophet of the Homerites. So he's a prophet. He was an apostle, and he received from the Lord, or writ a new volume, i.e. a new divine book. So we have somebody that we know from the Greek Orthodox accounts was a prophet, apostle, and had a divine book in the 6th century that the Muslims called Muhammad. Sorry, the Arabs called Muhammad. But we don't put two and two together to think, could this be one and the same person? Then over here from the Arab accounts, it says here that he was named Muhammad to become a prophet. He had his own creed. He went to Abraha in the Yemen, remained there with his creed till he died. So he had a creed, a religion, this particular Muhammad, from the Islamic records. And then he was also ordained or crowned. And I would say he was ordained or crowned as a bishop of the whole of the Arabian Peninsula, as the archbishop of this newly formed nation. Cool. Now, we see that the Islamic traditions discover particular information, documents, diplomatic documents. These diplomatic documents was very much so Christian in nature, the content. And I would say, and I'm willing to be wrong right here, but it seems to me, this seems to be the source of the Year of the Deputation narrative. If any of you guys know this, it's where different Arab rulers come to Muhammad to, give their loyalty or fealty to him. And then he sends off different letters to, again, the Najashi, which is the Ethiopian king, to the Roman king, and to the Persian king. And I'm like, this is very funny, because it seems like I've heard this story before, where these envoys are sent off, would have been sent off to these different kings, and then these kings came, or their ambassadors came. We have the Negus, the Roman king, the Persian king, and the different Arab rulers all come to this Muhammad in Marib rather than Mecca. Very interesting. Sounds very much so similar. Now, over here, I'm just going to quickly read through some of it to you. We have Yasid ibn Abu Habib al-Misri, who's a Nubian, told me that he found a document which was a memorandum of the apostles sent to the countries and kings of the Arabs and non-Arabs, and what he said to his companions when he sent them. I sent it to Muhammad ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and he recognized it. It contained the statements that the apostle went out to his companions and said. So if you don't know these names, these are, Zuhri has to be one of the earliest storytellers, compilers of hadith, and worked very closely with the Umayyad government to spread that type of propaganda out. And of course, Ibn Ishaq was there during that time period as well, but he later allied himself with the Abbasids. And these individuals kind of constructed what we know of the life of Muhammad. So what we find out here is that they have found a particular document, or somebody called Yasid has found this document, got amongst them to be like, we found this. Do you not recognize this? What could this possibly be? And then this document here, God has sent me as a mercy, supposedly Muhammad speaking, God has sent me as a mercy to all men. So take a message from me. God have mercy on you. Do not hang back from me. As the disciples hung back from Jesus, the son of Mary. They asked, how did they hang back? And he said, he called them to a task similar to that which I have called you. Those who had to go a short journey were pleased and accepted. Those who had a long journey before them were displeased and refused to go. And Jesus complained of them. Every one of them was able to speak the language of the people to whom he was sent. Speaking, of course, of Pentecost. Jesus said to them, this is a thing which God has determined that you should do. So go. Those whom Jesus, son of Mary, sent, both disciples and those who came after them in the land, were Peter the disciple and Paul with him. Paul belonged to the followers and was not a disciple, to Rome. Andrew and Matthew into the land of the cannibals. Thomas to the land of Babel, which is, and so forth, so forth, so forth, so forth. Yeah? I don't want to continue on that, but it's very interesting to note that this is a very Christian document. I don't know if this is legit or not, but it's a very Christian document, and it doesn't seem very Islamic in any sense. Because I think Muslims today, if we ask them, is Paul somebody that you will take from as being, is no, we all hate Paul. Paul changed the religion of Jesus, etc., etc., etc. But according to your prophet, according to this narration here, he says that he sent out Peter, the disciple, and Paul. Interesting that. But anyways, just to show you that in creating the traditions and the narrative of the Muhammad of the faith, they were drawing on previous materials, previously found materials even. And I'm even having to question, I'm putting out the question, could they have found a document that was relating to the historical Muhammad that they used to construct the narrative of this particular Muhammad that they were creating? Now, over here, I just wanted to just show you guys as well that other scholars have coming to the realization that the Muhammad of the Quran, quite clearly fits the paradigm of being a bishop, quite clearly fits the criteria of being an episcopal figure. This is Professor or Dr. Nicholas Salai, and he writes Muhammad as an episcopal figure. And just before the conclusion, page 30, he summarizes everything. And he says here, in sum, the Medinian Muhammad combines a range of tasks similar to that performed by late antique bishops, such as communal exhortation, serving as a moral exemplar, arbitration and adjudications, the redistribution of wealth for charitable purposes, and confronting pagans and Jews, both discursively and violently. Interestingly, late antique bishops were also frequently portrayed as emulating Moses in his capacity of an ideal, comprehensive leader combining spiritual, ethical, and political authority. Moses was the biblical model par excellence for bishops, especially among Greek authors. Thus, the fact that the Medinian Quran continues the late antique habit of casting an eminent individual in the image of Moses could at least in part be rooted in the fact that episcopal leaders in particular would often map specific situations in the life onto situations in the life of Moses. And it's the last bit I just wanted to actually get is here. In view of these parallels, it would not be amiss to characterize the Quranic messenger as playing the role of an overseer, which is, of course, the literal meaning of the Greek word episkopos, of the spiritual and communal well-being of the believers. So I just wanted to just highlight that, because I really wanted to start looking at the Quran and Muhammad through the life and lens of 6th century Arabia, what was taking place. And
I mean, if
Muhammad
if this particular Muhammad of the Islamic myth is obviously invented, right? They take someone who's obscure, who people perhaps know, so they can map a myth onto this figure. They take someone with a historically, with a strong historical past, like the bishop. They map that onto Muhammad, but they also give him, as you said, they make him a composite. He combines Moses, he combines Jesus, because I mean, there's hundreds of references to Moses and Jesus. I mean, depending how you count it in the Quran. I mean, there's technically supposedly only 4 references to Muhammad, but then you've got he combines the functions of the warrior and the priest, right, as well as the political leader. But also, if you go back in history, if you go back to Yemen, and you also go back to Aksum, something like 800 BC, you actually had a political leader. I can't remember the name offhand. I covered it in my monotheism series. The template that the Arabs were familiar with was the warrior, priest, king. So the caliph. So in fact, they first had a title. I can't remember what it was. Then it became the Amir, and then from Amir it became the caliph. But they had to take it from its pagan root, and it possibly went through the whole Christian meaning, and then they had to move it to the Amir, which was kind of neutral, and then eventually they picked the word caliph to remove the connotations. But they wanted to combine all of these authorities into one figure. So there was this process of alteration. But yeah, also, so they made a composite of what looks like a Christian figure, as well as, but they wanted to model him on an Arabian style that people were already culturally familiar with.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, definitely. I think, because there's separate parts to this, in the sense that there is different time periods where the shift takes place. And I think that is going to be a show. I would love to actually do a show on that. So we'll definitely touch back on that, and we'll do a show on that itself. But when we find about this particular Muhammad himself, we find out about his family, his lineage.
Right.
His lineage, he came from, a king. He came from a very great warrior himself called Al-Harith ibn Amir ibn Hujr. So very, very famous individual that worked with the Romans themselves. He's written inside of the Roman, Byzantine literature. And then again, we made mention of his brother, Muhammad's brother, called Qays. We can find all these individuals within inside of the 6th century. We haven't done it today, but if you go into Procopius, you find out about this Qays. You find about Abraha and Qays. The Romans wanted Abraha for Abraha to put Qays into power. To go ahead and fight off the Persians and so forth. But then later on, we find out from the Byzantine records that the Romans actually took Qays, placed him in Syria, and then Qays distributed his authority, his rulership, between his 2 brothers. One between his brother Muhammad, and the other to do with his brother Yazid. Yazid was the one who was to rule the Kinda tribes, and his brother was to rule Ma'ad/Mudar tribe. So it's very interesting. We haven't gone into the great details because there's so much information that you can find about this particular family, where this particular Muhammad came from, and it will completely astonish you. And I always say to myself, and I always say to my Muslim followers, like, we can find all this information about this Muhammad, but yet we know all this other information in the traditions. We know about Muhammad's damn near shoe size. Okay, we know that he's from Abdullah and Amina and Abdul Muttalib and Hashim and so forth and so forth and so forth. But we can't find any of these individuals within sight of any historical records. But this particular Muhammad, we find him within sight of the historical records. We find Abraha, we find all this information. Just to quickly wrap it up right now, over here on the right, it's just a little quick timeline, just to give you guys a timeline of what happened. You know, in the 500s, roughly in around 500 AD, the Axumites, Ethiopians on mainland Africa, you know, took control over the Arabian Peninsula, and they put you know, kings in play from the Himyarite tribe. But in 522, one of the kings that they did put in play actually reverted or converted, whatever terminology you want to use, back into Judaism. And he was the one for attacking the Christians and massacring them. And I would actually put forth, it's much more deeper than just simply attacking and massacring Christians. It had everything to do with a theological disposition, which again is linked to the Chalcedonian, to 451 in Chalcedonia, but that's a story for another day. And then King Caleb came in.
Sorry, just it's slightly off topic. Something I was going to maybe speak of later related to you just mentioned Syria, right? The Roman connection to Syria. You've mentioned the south. You've mentioned various areas. When you look at the words in the Quran, the foreign words in the Quran, they come from 4 distinct empires. The major words that are critical to understanding the Quran, not the word and the and water, but the critical words related to the salvation, the doctrine, the how Islam functions as a religion, as a political system, and so on. These words come from Aksum. They come through the Ethiopic. They come through the Ge'ez, basically Ethiopic. They come through Hebrew, they come through the Greek, and they come through the Syriac Aramaic, right? You just mentioned Syria because now you've got a religion that claims to have originated pure Arabic in Mecca, but yet it's critical words, which if you remove those 275, 300 words, approximately 300 words, if you remove those words from the Quran couldn't function. It would literally lose its entire core. And these words come from 4 separate kingdoms or countries or empires, which are not Islamic, which are not Arabic, So you've just mentioned, a couple of different connections. So clearly this is a composite made up of multiple ideas from multiple empires or cultures.
Definitely. I'm actually going to touch on that in the next slide. I'm going to touch on that on the next slide, actually. So before we go on to that, let me just quickly wrap it up and just show you, the rise of Abraha took place in 535 after he took control over after Sumafaya. It's all there anyway. Abraha then solidifies his independence from Aksum, subdues rebellions, and ordains his archbishop, which is Muhammad, in 548. And then the last inscription that we actually do have from Abraha is his building construction. Some scholars are putting forward it's the Senna Cathedral that he had built. Others put forward that it could be also a castle as well. But anyways, to conclude everything here, it says here the Ethiopians controlled and ruled over Arabia in the 6th century. Abraha converted the state religion from Miaphism. I think it should be like Miaphism. Anyways,
Greek, right?
Doesn't look right, but anyways, it could be to Orthodoxy. Abraha styled himself as a monarch of an autocephalous Orthodox church, the Orthodoxy. Consecrated the Archbishop of Abyssinia in Marib, his capital city. The Archbishop is known as Muhammad in Islamic accounts. The Archbishop is known as the Blessed One in the Orthodox accounts. The Quranic Muhammad fits the role of the 6th century Abyssinian Archbishop. But what are the implications for the rise of Islam? And again, this is taken from George Hadke. So, I love this particular author right here. Scholar. He says here, in contrast to the inscriptions of from Summa Yafa Ashwa reign, which employ Christian terms of Ge'ez derivation, the Christian terminology in Abraha's inscriptions is Syriac, and in one case, possibly Greek. This corresponds with the use of the foreign loanwords in the Quran, where Syriac loanwords far outnumber the Ge'ez. Although an Ethiopian by birth, Abraha seems to have adhered to a Christianity deriving from a source rather different from that of Sumayafa. Okay, so back to the Syriac. The reason why you will find so much Syriac loanwords, you will find so much pro-Byzantine elements in there that kind of originated during the 5th and 6th century, is because he had moved away from the Miaphysite, the normal Orthodox teachings of the Ethiopian church, moved away from that teaching and went and adopted the Diaphysite position. Okay, and we find that inside of the inscriptions. We find again in his inscriptions that he no longer uses the term, Rahman and the Son. There's no more the Son element within there. Actually, I think it's in this next bit. So a transition to a different conception of the role of Jesus can also be observed in Abraha's inscription. While Jesus is referred to as Rahman's son and Christ the victorious from Sumayafa's reign, he is referred to as Rahman's Messiah in inscriptions from Abraha's reign. The Christology which prevailed during Abraha's reign might have influenced Muhammad's teachings, as suggested by Rabban, in view of the manner in which Jesus is presented in the Quran as the Messiah, but not the Son of God. Okay, so when you go back and you look at his inscriptions, you see that there's no longer, the normal formulaic structure of Rahman. Rahman, he's the Son, and Manifest Kudus, which is the Holy Spirit. He completely changes it up to say, Rahman, he's Messiah, and the Ruhu Kudus. Okay, and what does that mean? What was taking place in the whole debate of 451 is the Christology. Is Jesus, did Jesus have a monophysite disposition? Was he just simply God, just God, basically, and the godliness assumed him? But the Deophysite position is making it clear, no, Jesus is both human and God. Human and God. And the best terminology that we can use for that is the Christ, because the Christ embodies both human side and God side, rather than the position that the Miaphysites were taking, that Jesus was God, or the implications that Jesus is just simply God. Hence, you find in the Quran the quite Nestorian appellation for Jesus. It always calls Jesus the son of Mary. Jesus, the son of Mary. Now, if you know anything about that, it's talking about the Christokos, which basically means that Mary bore the Christ, rather than, the whole conversations of the Theotokos, which meaning Mary bore the Son. Sorry, Mary bore God. And that's why you find in the Quran that you will have this conversation of how can I put it? It's basically trying to say to you, are you making Mary the third of the three? Are you making it's trying to show you that Mary should not be worshipped. Mary is only a human. Jesus is only a human. These argumentations seem like very silly to me anyway. When I read it, I'm like, this sounds so dumb, because this has nothing to do with the Trinity. This has nothing to do with Christian understanding. But once you understand the debates and conversations that were taking place inside interfaith conversations, so this is Christians versus Christians, they're having these conversations, and they're just, how can I put it, blowing things out of proportion as a straw man and trying to attack it. It's like, okay, now it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, there's a few things I wonder. There's a lot you threw at us here, because I know there's the inscription from Abraha, which I listed when I did my monotheism series. It actually speaks of Muhammad. Actually, hold on, let me try and find it. It's Rab. Let me try and find it. Oh, golly, it's easy if I find the reference, but Karabal, no. MHMD, sorry, I'm just going to try and find this reference. It's going to be tough. No.
Let's see if I can find it as well.
There's the inscription of, and they speak of Rab al-Muhammad or something like that, but it actually, the inscription says, so it uses the name Muhammad, but it actually says in the name of God the Father, right, and His Son and the Holy Spirit. So they explicitly refer to Muhammad here as God. And then in another section, there's another inscription or something where they refer to Muhammad as Jesus, right? So this is an Ethiopic inscription from like decades, if not a century before Muhammad, where they speak of God or Jesus both as Muhammad within the Ethiopic inscriptions. So I mean, you've got evidence here that this is the Trinity referring directly to the Trinity. And then of course these guys come along later on, and it's like suddenly Muhammad means this guy that there's no evidence for.
Correct. Just give me a little while. I want to find the inscription as well, so everybody can see it.
Yeah, if I may. So, Kalam, am I right in thinking that you think that Rahman was a title for Jesus?
It's possible, but I wouldn't put forward that because I can't prove that. So no, I wouldn't put forward that argument.
Okay. Well, I cannot prove it, but I will put it forward. Can I share my screen? Let me see if I can share my screen just to show you something.
Well, I'll look for my stuff in the meantime as well.
Yeah. So real quickly, let me just before you share your screen
at the same time.
So
sorry,
before you do that, I just wanted to show you. So this is it here. This is the J828, written in July 523. The last line is
Muhammad. Yes, that's it.
That's it. Lord of the Jews with the praise one. And if you wanted to see it right here, you have it right here, which is this is the M, this is the H, this is the M, and this is the D. So right here, it says Muhammad right there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Muhammad, which refers to the Trinity, the Lord of the Jews with the praised one, exactly. So this is a reference to the Trinity, to God and it speaks explicitly of and His Son.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Muslims come along later and like, yeah, I know, actually it's not that. Because they just deny everything. They simply just deny everything. Odon, you seem to be very deep in thought there. Any thoughts from you?
It's fascinating. It's fascinating. I think it might complement my own findings very well. But I have a question for you, Kalam. You said that Abraha, when he presented this Mahmad or Muhammad bishop, the Ethiopian church was an autocephaly church at the time.
Yes.
I'm correct. Now, that's very important because the Ethiopian church has been known not to be an autocephaly church.
Correct.
And so the head of the church had to come from Egypt, usually an Egyptian monk that was sent to Ethiopia to be the archbishop. Because if it wasn't an autocephaly church, it means that this Muhammad bishop, he might have been an Ethiopian himself.
Yeah. Yes,
and there's also another thing. During this time, during the 5th century, the end of the 5th and the 5th century, there is a tradition within the Ethiopian church of having I think it's the number is 9. Yeah, it's nine monks who came from the Roman Empire and established monasteries in Ethiopia, and some scholars believe that the church really developed only after them. So yes. There is also another influence within Ethiopian Christianity. There is a sort of pure Ethiopian Christianity with this Mahmad bishop, and also influences from the Roman Empire. That seems to have been very, very strong. I take it from Manfred Kropp, who is also a very well-known specialist of Ethiopian Christianity. I see you quoted him in your presentation.
It's odd that the
key
elephant that
thing here
attacked,
is, who is this Mahmad character? Who is he exactly?
oddly enough, the elephant that attacks in the year of the elephant is also called Mahmad,
Yes.
which is like, huh? It's
Yeah,
just like,
exactly. It's like, huh? So hold on. There's a Muhammad that was with a Mahmed. Like, what? Made that make sense to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's very interesting because again, when we start looking at the Ethiopic records, you know, there is it was very interesting because the tribe that the historical Muhammad is from is said to be from the Dakwan. You know, he's a tribe. There's several different layers from Dakwan, from Banu Salim, from Banu Thalaba, etc. But the word Dakwan within inside of Ethiopia, I should actually bring it up to show you that Caleb sent out a troop called the Dakwan tribe. The Dakwan tribe is actually elephant. It literally means the elephant tribe. So it's like very interesting. It's like, what connection does that actually have?
right. Also, just oddly, there's a term called the mukarib or the mukaribba for plural.
Yes.
This was a term that was very common amongst the Sabans. This was from Axum all the way across into Arabia. And the mukarib is considered a sovereign, a warrior priest king who is superior to the kings. He's like an emperor. He's actually above the kings. And he contains all religious authority, religious, military, and political power. And this term eventually got changed to the Amir because it was too much of a pagan term, because they needed a supreme ruler like Caliph, but they went from Mukarib, which is very much a pagan term, which was part of the Yemeni religion, which was basically the religion of Babylon, and then they had to change it to Amir, but then Amir eventually became Caliph. So once you trace it back, and this guy went on razzias, he went on jihad, he went on raids, he did all the things Muhammad did, which is a model that they already had in that region that was familiar to them. So they took the Christian model and they stuck it on, they took the Jewish model, but they seem to have, used existing substrate and then just added things on top as well.
And what's very interesting as well, for that, the term Khalif is first introduced by Abraha in this inscription that we do have, which is the CIH 541 inscription. And what's even more interesting is it is applied to his Khalif, who is Yazid ibn Habsha. And Yazid ibn Habsha is actually I'm talking about the historical Muhammad, it's his brother. So it's like very, very interesting stuff when we really delve into it. And scholars have just started to, write about it. They've shown that the two terms of Rasul and Khalif is basically was introduced. It was never used in the Arabian Peninsula ever before. And in Abraha's inscription is the first time that these terms are actually introduced.
Okay, that's interesting. JC, you wanted to add something? You're on the screen there.
Yeah. So just briefly about the whole Rahman, could it be about Jesus? Well, of course, that leads to is the Bismillah in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Well, of course, yeah, but let's not upset anybody today. It's Kalam, like you said, it's very difficult to prove, but we have this translation from Saint Murad. He doesn't translate Rahman, which makes it very easy to actually find out where Rahman is actually used. This is the count outside of the 113 Bismillahs. So if you remove all of that, this is how it is used. Also, most of these names of Allah, they will appear in these formulas at the end of verses, but Ar-Rahman is one of the very few that breaks that rule together with Creator and Lord. It's used in sentences with Ar-Rahman, remember Ar-Rahman match, and whatever it is. It's used as a normal noun in a sentence. And where it appears the most, Surah 19, 16 counts.
Oh
That's
wow,
more than double
Mhm.
in any other place. So I think it's a very difficult thing to prove, but I think when they wrote the Quran, Ar-Rahman was a title for Jesus.
hmm And then, hmm. There's also, sorry, just slightly off topic, but there's a couple of very odd hadiths, right, that say that the Prophet said that our belief is Yemenite. I mean, these come out of nowhere. I mean, for me, these are, how can I say, when you're working in an environment and then suddenly there's this random thing that just like, huh? I mean, it draws your attention. Like, why is it there?
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't get followed up, but it's like a loose end that someone forgot to erase completely, or they erased everything that connects to it. But the belief of the Muslims is Yemenite, and the Yemenis believed in Al-Makkah, Makkah, the moon god of Babylon. This was just their version of the Babylonian religion. So why do they say that the belief, our belief, is Yemenite? Because those, then what's the story with Yemen? And there's clearly a connection to Yemen. Sure, there's a connection to the north, but there's this ignored connection to the south and to to East Africa as well.
Yeah. I say it like this, right? Let's take thought experiment, okay? Thought experiment, because I know a lot of people will be like, God forbid this. Thought experiment. Let's say Muhammad is as the Muslims claim, okay? So you have the Shahada or the Shahadatain, La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. Okay, so Muhammad is the messenger of God, or is the apostle of God. That's the correct terminology. Now, my question to you is this: what is an apostle?
Oh.
What's an apostle?
Different to a prophet. They're very different to a prophet. A prophet's a messenger who comes with the message, but the apostle is someone who was with the messenger.
Oh, an
Or the
apostle is
Well, I
someone
would
who has
say,
been sent.
I would say, yeah,
An
there you
apostle,
go.
a
Sent.
rasul,
So,
is someone who has been sent.
sent.
So there is someone sending another person, and this other person is an apostle because he has been sent by someone to do something.
Correct. So if we are in, if we hear the word apostle, immediately it's a Christian terminal. Well,
You're right.
if we want to be neutral, we can say, Greek, whatever the case is, but it's usually a Christian terminology. We have the 12 apostles, the 12 first that were sent out, but then we also have other apostles that were sent. I'm in the UK. We have somebody called the apostle to the English, or the apostle of the English. That apostle's name is called Saint Augustine. Saint Augustine has his throne here in the UK, in Canterbury. It's the archbishop, and every bishop or archbishop that has to be enthroned goes to Canterbury, gets enthroned, is the Archbishop of Canterbury. So if we just take that and we say we grant that Muhammad is also an apostle, where would everything that should follow along with it is he should have a cathedral, he should have a throne, other people should actually sit on that throne after him, etc., etc., etc. And we find this inside of the historical records, but for some reason historians are like baffled by the same. So we have the Maronite, I don't know if you know about the Maronite Chronicle. We have the Maronite Chronicle. It talks about Muawiyah. Muawiyah refused to go to the throne of Muhammad. So you're saying that Muhammad had a throne, but he refused to go to the throne of Muhammad.
That makes no sense.
Interesting. Yeah. That we also find that Muawiyah, what did he do? He sent an expedition. He sent an expedition into Marib, and he literally killed a lot of the people of Islam. He killed them. It's like, huh? Why did that happen? Why directly after that taking place, you had the counter caliphate that rose up. And the first time we find inside of dated materials we find during the Zubayd Caliphate, the first mention of Muhammad is the Rasulullah. Like we first find that charisma of Muhammad being the apostle of Allah. Why? Why is that person doing that? It's in contrast, or it's in opposition to the Umayyad rule, who didn't want to sit on the throne of Muhammad, right? Down in the Maghrib, killed all those people, relocated stuff, right? So they were literally fighting against each other. And it's like, we have to go into the history and figure out what was taking place during that time frame and the construction of this new religion, this new Christianity, or this new Islam that came about. But really and truly, it all started in the south, and the Umayyads were the one to come in and kind of just change everything around, make you think that, Marib, the cathedral, is no longer in Marib. The throne of Muhammad is no longer in Marib. It's now in Mecca. They've now created the Hajj ritual. They've now created, everything happens after 700 AD. You would never find anything to do with, Mecca before that time period. You won't find that there was it literally tells you in the inscription that this is the year 693, I believe it was, when the Kaaba was built, basically. 693, the Kaaba was built. In the year 700 and so forth, we find the Hajj ritual taking place. We find all this stuff taking place after that time period. Then they create a story to say, you know what? What happened in the past was that Abraha built a cathedral to be in competition with Mecca, where the truth of the story is Marib was already there from hundreds of years. This was the central place where all Christians were going, all pilgrimages were taking place, all sacrifices, all those things were taking place in the Marib region. And then it's the Umayyads that came in and created another place in the middle, which is Mecca, to go against what was originally taking place down in the south. That's what really took place. They literally switched everything on its head, switched around the stories of Muhammad being from south to now Muhammad being in the north, and create a whole new narrative. And it's like, we need to get back to the original narrative. And that's why this year I just want to go hard on literally just going into the inscriptions and going into the contemporary records. Let's look at Islam through those lens. What does the material culture tell us? And then afterwards, let's now look at the the stories.
Here's something I want to show you. These are all references in the Hadiths, maybe not every single one, but the Prophet said belief is Yemenite, right? We should seek out Iman and Aqidah, faith and theology, from the people of Yemen. The faith is Yemeni, wisdom is Yemeni. The belief is that of the Yemenites. The wisdom is that of the Yemenites. The capacity for understanding the religion is Yemenite. The belief is that of the Yemenites. The understanding of the faith is that of the Yemenites. Now, why would we then suddenly forget all about the Yemenites, and one day we're all just sitting in Iraq?
Yeah.
You know why? There's another element that I found very interesting. Ethiopia was never conquered by Muslims. It was left alone. It is in the region the only Christian territory that was not attacked. There was no Muslim ruler there. So it was left untouched during the 7th century, and it remained untouched afterwards. And this is also something that is very, very strange, very weird. They conquered everything. Yeah. They conquered every Christian territory, the whole of the North African coast, Spain, up to Central Asia, but they did not touch Ethiopia. This also tells us something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
And also, why is Muhammad often called as Sabaean? Muhammad the Sabi. That's another weird one. Because, you know what? I traced out. Can I just share my screen again? Actually, no, wrong screen. Just share something. You just made me think of a few things. I'm just trying to collect a few dots here, connect some dots together. This was my
as well about the Yemeni corner in the Kaaba being the most important one.
Yeah,
so
the holiest corner, touch the Yemeni corners. Let me just show, because Kalam, it's not like any specific point you're making, but it's just that I'm trying to start connecting dots and drawing lines between things, right? Someone's screen joined. I will do that in a moment.
No, that's for me, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, you've got Syriac. These numbers are not exact. Okay, this is based on one calculation. Then I do a different calculation with a different set of numbers later. But you're looking at about 40 to 55%, depending on what you're looking for, of the text of the foreign words in the Quran are Syriac Aramaic. In other words, from Syria. Now you're looking at northern Turkey, southern Syria. Actually, if I put them on a map, you're going to be, there's words from one area. No. Okay. Northern Levant, Ethiopic, about 10 to 15%, Hebrew, 13%, right? But the Hebrew words are all the words that they use to describe the prophets, right? The Syriac words, they describe for all worship and religious concepts, which says that this was a Syriac Aramaic lectionary, it's like basically it's a palimpsest, and underneath you've got the Syriac. They've changed the rasm, they've added some diacritics and changed a couple of letters to alter the text. The Ethiopic is a little bit architecture, physical structure, and administrative stuff, right? The Persian words are about government and descriptions of the afterlife taken from after they conquered the Sassanids, right? And all the descriptions of paradise come from Middle Persian words, which is really interesting, right? So it's like they borrowed that concept wholesale from Persia. They stripped it right out. The rest is all Greek, so about 23%. But if you take these words out, the Quran cannot describe God, Allah, its prophet, its prayers, or its own chapters. If you remove these 300 words, which are foreign words, Islam basically can't function, right? And then, but if you map these areas out, these four empires, you're looking at Yemen, right? You're looking at Yemen to just over the border into Najran. So the words are concentrated from Yemen to Najran. Then you're looking at from Petra to Gaza, right? Just concentrated in that region. You're looking at Aksum, which is in Ethiopia. And then you're also looking at northern Iraq to just over to Syria and Turkey, right? So the words are concentrated northern Iraq, Syria, Turkey, which tells you that these words had to come through trade networks. And you've got four separate things. So there's four locations with various cities you can map, right? There's various primary cities you can map. And these words, so these people were meeting. So between the north and south, they were meeting at cities that are known to be trade hubs. We can identify those trade hubs. I looked at them today. I found several. And so these words didn't come from Arabia. There's like nothing from Arabia. It's all from four areas you can identify on a map.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Another thing to be said about Abyssinia or Ethiopia, it was the key for the control of the maritime, the maritime trade route to India and China, the Silk Road, the maritime Silk Road. So it's another weird thing. Why didn't the Arabs conquer this strategic position in order to control the trade to the Far East? It's also something very, very weird. And besides, I fully agree with you, Lloyd. It's Islam is a sort of a soup or a melting pot that was made along the trade routes. So Ethiopia and so on, like you said. But ultimately, it was made in Baghdad by the Abbasids, who had their own reasons to do things.
I mean, what's his name? We all know his name. Oh my gosh, I just forgot the guy's name now. But we all know who. I mean, what is his name? Marwan. What's his name?
Oh, Marwan.
Abdul Malik ibn Marwan. Yeah, it's him. It's clearly him. I mean, all the evidence points to that guy. Even when I looked, the evidence points straight to that guy.
Yeah.
Jay's right. I mean, the evidence goes to Ibn Marwan, Abdul Malik.
And one thing, Lloyd, now that we were talking about evidence pointing at this, Lloyd, did you mention once that there was like a museum in Yemen that was suspiciously and accidentally blown up?
Yes, there was this museum in a very okay. So the Mecca. Okay, so in Yemen there was a place that we can identify Okay, so the word Makoraba, right? Mukaraba can easily be so. Okay, they always speak of Mecca, Makoraba. This is one of the early geographic names that Muslims point to as Mecca, right? Makoraba. But if you look at it, Makoraba comes from Mukaraba, which is where the caliph basically of the pagan Yemeni dynasty sat, and that was wiped out. But the museum that had 12,000 artifacts of the area proving the connection from the pagans to the Muslims to the Arabians. Yeah, an F-16 dropped 2 bombs on it, and it wasn't far away from the war. It's in a civilian neighborhood that was untouched by the war, but they targeted explicitly the museum and they wiped out 12,000 artifacts. Yes.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Why would they do that? For random reasons, just go bomb a museum.
Bad luck. Bad luck.
That's crazy. That is crazy. So yeah, I actually wanted to just point out that again, within Islamic literature, they speak about Muhammad's brother. If we saw the last one, the slide I showed you, and I just wanted to just show you this individual here, who is Muhammad's brother, that's written about within side of the Byzantine records.
He's not white. He cannot be Muhammad's brother. Muhammad was the whitest dude ever. Okay, this guy doesn't fit that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I love to separate, the Muhammad of faith. And I don't mind whatever color you want to put your Muhammad of faith as. I don't mind. We can find him described as being white, and we can find him being brown skin. All those things exist within inside of the Islamic records. I don't even care about that. For those people who want to do, again,
is
these
that
individuals.
Muhammad's gay brother?
Sorry?
The gays? Muhammad's brother? Muhammad's gay?
No, this one is called Case. This is Case, and this is the historical Muhammad. So I like to separate the historical from the Muhammad of faith. So the historical Muhammad that was with Abraha in the 6th century, his brother was called Case, or Casus inside of the Greek. And this here is Case, to whom Yunus was sent, was chief of 2 of the most illustrious Saracen tribes, the Kinder and the Ma'ad. Before Yunus was appointed ambassador, his father had been sent to this same Casus by Justinian and had concluded a treaty of peace on condition that Casus' son Muawiyah should be taken as a hostage to Byzantium. After this, Yunus was entrusted with a 3-fold mission to Casus to induce him, if possible, to visit the emperor, to Elisabas, king of the Axumites and the Amorites. Axumites. Okay, so it continues, and it says here, as for the Homerites, it was decided that they should establish Case, the fugitive, as captain over the Ma'adini, and with a great army of their own people and of the Ma'an Saracens, make an invasion into the land of the Persians. This Case was by birth of the captain's rank, an exceptionally able warrior. Okay, so Case, he had 2 other brothers called Yazid and Muhammad, but his birth name is not Muhammad. His birth name is Amir. Okay, so these 3 brothers, were together. Case went over into Syria with the Byzantians, and then his 2 brothers took over the Kinder tribe and the Ma'ad tribe. Now we find that, as I said, just to show you guys, it's all there within inside of the literature itself, and then we find that why is it not going? There you go. Then we find that this particular Yazid is also mentioned within inside of Abraha's inscription as the one who actually revolted from Abraha. So it says here, so this Yazid, he revolted and broke his oath. Yazid ibn Kabsha, his governor, Khalifat there, whom he had appointed over Kinder, while this tribe had no governor, he rebelled, and with him the princes of Sabath, etc., etc., etc. So just to show you that, these individuals that's been mentioned is not just mentioned within inside of the Islamic records, they're also mentioned within inside the Byzantium records, and it's also mentioned within inside of Abraha's inscription itself. So I just wanted to just.
We should mention the Prince of Sabah. That's actually Sheba. That's Sheba, correct. Sabah Sheba, which is Yemen, basically.
Yes.
Oman,
correct.
Yemen, if you can think of that, Yemen.
That's right. Yeah. And this family, was a
very. Just go back. Sorry, just go back to that page. Just go back to that page, please. Mm-hmm. Where we had Sabah. Just go back.
Yeah.
Go one more. And then, okay, Mad Karib. You see Karib. There's the Mad Karib, second last line on the top one. Mad Karib. So there you've got a prefix mu, ma, mu, right? Muslim, right? Mu is actually a prefix to the Silam, right? Mu is a prefix, one who follows the Silam, or one who is obedient to, or adherent to, or a worshipper of. And then you have the Ma'di Karib. So you've got the Kariba. So you've got these links, I mean, within the language and the history, and they wanted to erase all of that, because you will find links to the previous religions of Arabia, which, because they cut everything off at 570, there's never a reference to the religion that was endemic in that whole region prior to Muhammad.
Yeah. And I wanted to bring up the fact that you have this family here, and I just want everybody just to, like, in your own time, please, like, research these individuals, or research this family here called the Banu Taliban. This is like a very, very prominent family. And again, like, people always, I always say to people, like, listen, I am not an Arab, I am not an Ethiopian, but I love history. And this family here has to be given their props, because nobody else is going to do it. So I'm going to just do it for them and give them their props. Al-Harith ibn Amir ibn Hujr, he's made mention of inside of the Byzantine records. You have all these great individuals here that did wondrous things. Imr al-Qays, he's known as, like, a famous poet inside of Islam. He's pre-Islamic, basically. Like, this, if you want to talk pre-Islamic poetry, he is like creme de la creme. Then you have somebody here called Amir, who is the daughter of Hind. He was also a Lakhmid ruler. He's big as well. And then, of course, you have the three brothers right there. And then Al-Harith ibn Amir. And then Hind, she was the one who built built a monastery anyway, inside of the Lakhmid Empire itself. So over here, just to show you about the Thalaba tribe clan, it says here, the Arabs of the land of the Romans, also who are called of the house of Thalaba. Sorry, just it's covering it. So let me go over here and read it from here. The house of the Thalaba went to Al-Hira, but they did not stay at Al-Hira because its inhabitants had withdrawn into the inner desert. So yeah, this is like a very, very famous tribe that literally ruled a good portion of Arabia, the Kinders, like all that central region here.
Yeah.
All this region here, like, that's where they ruled. All this region here. But they were underneath the Himyarite kings, and then afterwards they aligned themselves with the Axumites and the Habesha kings. But yeah, very, very famous because they literally had autonomy. Even though they had diplomatic arrangements with the Byzantines and the Ethiopians, they were kind of like self-autonomous, and they did their own thing as well.
Yeah. I want to show something.
Just before, Lloyd, please. Kalam, have you made a connection between this family and the false prophets of the Islamic tradition? There is this very strange topic. There are 4 or 5 figures within the Islamic tradition of false prophets, opposed to Muhammad as being the right prophet. And some of them ruled the Yamama region, for example, and other regions in Arabia.
Yes. So that is an area of interest that I would love to get into. This is like the Ridda period. What was going on during that time period? Unfortunately, all we have to rely on is the Islamic accounts. So I haven't been like, I don't really care about the Islamic accounts. I'd rather have something that I can solidly hold on to. Give me an inscription, give me an outside source, give me a coin, give me something that I can hold on to. Otherwise, it's just like one tradition versus another tradition. But there is a wealth of knowledge that we need to be able to unpack.
But you can, to some degree, do a statistical pattern match using language patterns. It is possible to do some reverse engineering using language patterns. I mean, large language models are very good at that as well. Yeah. You can pattern match. You can look at things that look like erasures or changes, so you can get clues and hints that way. There's a possibility. I've been looking at some of that, and JC and I started on a little bit down that road. We're looking at potentially doing some of that. I just wanted to show that the term Muslim, I mean, people don't realize it's actually a compound word. It's mu, it's a prefix. Mu is a follower of or an adherent of, someone who worships something, or someone who does or believes in mu, someone who, right? But this, few people realize this is a Muslim, that's Muslim, okay? This, from that region, from this whole region, this is Islam. It's an idol. It's a stone pillar idol. Here you've got an example. I'll just zoom in here. Here you've got examples: stone pillar idols or engraven idols. Remember the biblical prohibition against graven idols? So you have this is a Silam here. That's a Silam. So one who worships the graven idols and pillar statues. I've covered this in the past, but there's a lot more to this. So, for instance, then you have Silam, like you can have Shalom, right? Salam. But if you look at the very oldest use, Silam is actually a pagan god, right? Shalim, I believe it is. And so these are worshippers of the god Shalim, something like that. So there's just these odd connections because they push heavily Salam, but then you're like, hold on, but this root goes way back past that. Why'd they pick this one?
Yeah. Interesting. That is interesting. Hey, that gives me. Let me not even. That gives me a new way of thinking of Muslim. Yeah, no, let me not even do that.
No, you make me think of things. Look, I'm trying to understand your sense, but I don't understand it all, of course, right? It's new to me as well. But I'm trying to see now. But there's all these other little outlying pieces. These little loose hanging pieces. How do we connect all these dots?
Yeah, and there are other dots also. Besides your work on this Ethiopian aspect, we know, for example, that the Quran is all about Jerusalem and not Mecca. That the temple was rebuilt. This we know for sure. We have strong evidence for it. We have evidence for the Quraysh tribe having settled in Syria. We have many other pieces to this jigsaw puzzle, and yes, we have to make sense of it. I was also thinking.
JC brought up this thing, so yeah, go on, please, Odon.
Lloyd, you were telling that everything is about Abdul Malik and his father, and if you look into it, his father is one of the first or the second in the Islamic tradition to have named one of his sons Muhammad. So Marwan had several sons. One was Abdul Malik, and another one was Muhammad. And the other figure in the Islamic tradition who had done so was Ali. Ali, I think he named his fifth son Muhammad also. But other from these two people, we have no Muhammad within the Islamic tradition up until the 8th century. So the name was not used.
All right.
The first users were Ali, supposedly, and Marwan.
Well, that's interesting. That is interesting. Hold on. Let me just. Okay, can I just show? Bugger. I've done it again. I lost my place. Let me do this again. It's been a long time since I've worked on this, and let me do this again.
Wow.
Mahabisha. So, okay. So tell me something. Does this okay? Makuraba. I think I have it wrong. Sorry, my bad. I'm getting lost here. The where. That's what I'm looking for. This is the page I'm looking for. Sorry, let me start again. Okay, so let me just minimize that. So tell me something, what you guys pick up here. So Ptolemy's geography, they go back to say Makuraba as an early reference to Mecca, okay? So according to Ptolemy, it's a city in the northwestern Arabia, Felix, which we know is Yemen, because it's green, happy Arabia, it's green. There's actual beautiful dates. Everything that people ascribe to Petra also fits to Yemen, right? So Claudius Ptolemy's 2nd century geography puts Makoraba in the west of the Arabian Peninsula. So Muslim apologists claim it is Mecca, right? So he was a Greek writer who wrote the guide to drawing the earth, and he listed his own version of latitude and longitude for the cities, mountains, and other features of the day. Now, myriad sources included, of course, Ptolemy, right? So, and they speak of the Saracens, okay? So Bochart, this is a geographer, gave an account of Arabian geography. He identified the location of the Hejaz and named some of the towns, including Mecca, and he writes, which in Ptolemy is Makoraba. This is where the reference to Makoraba being Mecca comes from, this guy, Bochart. And he says here, Mecca Rabba, or the great Mecca. Now, this is the first recorded instance where Makoraba is identified with Mecca. But this happens in like 1671. This is not a 2nd century reference. This is someone identified A with B in like 1646. There we go. The first identification of Makoraba as Mecca is Samuel Bochart in Sacred Geography 1646. But no one has been able to say that, how this connects, because nobody says it connects. He made this claim back then, but everyone's like, no, there's no way this connects, right? So the word is based on the Semitic root makarab, meaning temple, sanctuary, but also altar. Bochart used makat, rabba for great Mecca, but this root here is not Arabic. It doesn't fit the Arabic whatsoever. Now, okay, so you've got muqarrib, and now we go back to muqarrib, sanctuary, right? And we can take this back to the pagans, and we can take it back to Aksum. Okay, so then Makoraba, okay, so it has been calculated. This is Mecca here, right? That's Makkah, okay? So now here are Ptolemy's original locations overlaid on a modern map. Mecca and Makoraba marked in red, okay? But there's no 8th century artifact. So what they did was, so eventually someone actually did the calculations. They figured it out. Sorry, my bad. They figured it out and they worked out it's Al-Mahabisha here in Yemen. Makoraba is here, right? And this is how green it is. It fits the description of Mecca perfectly, right? And it's all here, 720K south of Mecca, right? And then there's a whole bunch of religious things. And this is exactly, and here's where the museum was that had these 12,000 pieces that the Saudis bombed.
Wow.
And this is one of the major centers where Arabic language words come from. Yeah, go on. JC, sorry, guys.
I was just laughing.
Yeah, so you can see the thing is that this is an ancient map. These things were so badly done. It's taken ages for people to figure out the coordinates. Right, so I just thought I'd share that. I mean, these look nothing. You can see Italy versus, these look nothing like like these maps should. So yeah, your thoughts?
Do you have the map of Ptolemy, the famous one that was done? I think it's probably in the 12th century or something like that.
This was Ptolemy's map here. I think I just showed it. Let me just bring it back up. Ptolemy's map accuracy here. I mean, he didn't even have anything to the south. He didn't know what was to the south. It's just, he called everything below Egypt Ethiopia. So everything here is just Ethiopia. And you can see how badly drawn this map is. This is Italy here. This little bit here is Italy. It's completely, everything's off.
France is not so bad. So.
Yeah, but he knew Europe, right? But once he moved south, everything went wild.
It's because there is another map that is used quite a bit, and it has all of the different cities as he wrote them, zooming in Arabia. And if we look at that map, if there was an original place that became Mecca, it should be on that map, but with a different name.
I mean, if you look at, if you go to, okay, it's Wikipedia, so take it with a pinch of salt, but sometimes Wikipedia is amazing and sometimes it's garbage, right? But if you look at, Wikipedia has a list of the 15 oldest attested cities in Saudi Arabia. And Mecca's not on it, and even Medina's not on it.
Yeah. And you know why?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's made up.
it's
It's
made up.
completely made up.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
made
so
up.
yeah, you give it. I mean, here's an old map as well. If we zoom in here, I mean, this is completely wrong. This is an old map from 1482. And do you guys see Mecca prominently listed on this thing?
No.
No, but the thing here is you are dealing with Western geographers. There might be not some. The former map, for example, the former map you showed completely ignores China, for example.
He didn't even know it existed. Probably he just put stuff he knew. He didn't. These are probably things.
Tell me,
This
knew
one
about
has.
China.
Okay, and now that you mentioned as well Medina or Yathrib, if seeing as Mecca is only mentioned for the first time, we have any attestations of it in the 8th century, do you know when is the earliest attestation of Yathrib being called Medina, by any chance?
That's pretty old, actually. I do have it somewhere. It's actually quite old. I think that goes way back.
Islamic tradition.
Yathrib goes way. At least Yathrib goes way back.
Yathrib goes way
Yathrib.
back, but the term Medina.
It goes back to Nabonidus. The word Yathrib appears in an inscription found in Haran belonging to the Babylonian king Nabonidus. That's in Haran. That's in Syria, across the border of Turkey, with Nabonidus.
What I mean is, if
But
it
the
was
thing is,
Abdul
here's the
Malik
thing. You've
who,
got Yathrib. I mean, think about New York. You had York in England, and now you have New York, which was first New Amsterdam, right? People go somewhere, and they take a name with them. So you have Yathrib in Syria, southern Syria, on the border, which is where Abraham kind of came from. They take that name, they go to some random place in Arabia, and they name the new place also Yathrib.
Yeah, might be. But we also have an Abil Beit Makkah in Syria, for example.
Yes, exactly.
Abu
Perfect one.
Qubais in Syria also.
Just say that again. Just repeat that, Odon, because that's a powerful point. Go on.
I put it in my book. It's from the French geographer René Dussault, who found on several places in Syria that share common names with places in Saudi Arabia. So we have Abu Ka'beh, for example, Abu Kaaba, Abu Qubais.
Let me find your book.
Abil Bet Makkah. You want me to share my screen?
Yes, you can share it. Otherwise, I have your copy up here if you want.
You do
it. You can just tell me the page to go to.
Page number is 37.
Ave Maria is from that part of the world, and she says, Ya Rab, Yathrib, Yathrib, Ya Rab, Ya Rab, my God, my God.
Yeah. So it's on page 37. We'll find this ancient map.
Oh, great. Hold on. Let me just go here. 37. Yes, you're right. So which ones? Khan al-Quraysh.
This is the Khan al-Qurashiyeh. So the
Syria.
Inn, or the Qurashiyeh's halt.
And this is in Syria. Very far from Mecca.
Look at the description. Description of the map. Here, Abu Kaaba, Abu Qubais, Abil Bet Makkah.
That's crazy, Makkah.
And those are places in Syria.
In Syria, yeah.
So what I mean is,
it's like you said about York and New York, or Amsterdam and New Amsterdam. They took the names with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if they take these names with them, everything starts in up north, because we have all of those connections to Jerusalem and so on. If they end up during the time of Abdul Malik creating Mecca in the middle of the desert, a city that didn't exist before, he creates the Masjid al-Aqsa, or at least he starts constructing it, and so on. So the question is, Yathrib was a city for a really long time, but do you know when it is attested for the first time, anyone calling it Medina?
Yeah, and I answered you. It's within the Islamic tradition. It's not, the real name is not Medina. It's Madinat al-Nabi, the city of the Prophet, the city. So it's a generic name for any city where a prophet might have been. So actually, we don't know whether it's the Islamic tradition is about Yathrib. Yathrib is named in the Islamic tradition, but Madinat al-Nabi, it might be anywhere. It might be in Petra. It might be in another place.
Okay, so the earliest reference is the Chronicle of Khuzestan in 650. That mentions Medina, named after Abraham's second son, Midian, also known as Yathrib. Abraham's second son, Midian, also known as Yathrib.
No,
It seems
that's
very
not
strange. Very
Kalam,
strange.
you opened up a can of worms here.
Hello.
Oh gosh.
Keep on giving.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
actually
so-
thinking that if in the traditions they refer to a city as the city of the prophet, the first thing that I would be thinking about is Jerusalem. They would think like Jerusalem is the big city, so the city of the prophet. Or if they are really going into the traditions, thinking the Nazareth or something like that. But that is in the traditions and it is much later, unless they're borrowing from different traditions. But okay, that's very cool.
But we can see Syria, that region, has like 40 to 50+% of the words that are critical to Islamic religion come from that region. And now we see all these name references, all these links geographically. And then then they moved it south, so they had to absorb also the Ethiopic. But the thing is, you've also got ancient traditions they had to merge with the religion, all these pagan things that come well before. I mean, they couldn't just make it totally foreign. They had to integrate it somehow, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting, man.
They do have to create their traditions because at one point they didn't have any traditions. So they borrow from lots of different ones, including Christians, Jewish traditions, the whole thing, also pagans, as we can see from what they do. And also, I think they're probably restricted at one point with the Quran. So they're trying to make the Quran fit what they're doing in real life. And they're basically trying to come up with a story that fits everything. And they did an amazing job with that.
Yeah. I mean, so what should we? Should we have this discussion again? I mean, there seems to be some things that could be. I mean,
Definitely.
You just added a new part to the thesis, Kalam. I mean, at least for us. I mean, it's not new to you. It's new to, But I mean, but there's other. I mean, so of the things we've said here, do you see that things that also connect? That we've got these things that are linked, but we haven't yet figured out all the links. But do you think this is all part of the same puzzle? You've just given us a big piece.
100%, 100%. You certain things you said to me, I'm like, oh, okay, that's another way of looking at it as well. So I can't wait. Because I know what I'm going to do tomorrow. Like literally tomorrow, the first thing I'm going to do in the morning is rewatch this episode and take notes from the things that you guys have said today. And I'm like,
reach out to me. I'll send you stuff.
Yeah.
And then Odon has all these very strong links to Syria, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's archaeology. You can't deny what's written on the rock or the name or the place, right? That's solid data.
Yes, 100%. I think that if I'm correct in what I'm saying, and we look at the Archbishop being the prophet and apostle that spread this new form of Christianity. I say new form of Christianity. It's not new, really. It's just that it's new to the region in terms of
when does he die? When does he die?
Oh, he dies. We don't know. Even for Abraham himself.
Before 670, right? Before 570. Sorry, before 570. Right?
They say before 570, but at the same time, we literally do not know. Because the only reason
if he was
why
a famous guy, he would have been a fantastic template to put the myth on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right? Now they've got a figure they can use him because he's in living memory. He was famous, and they've got the right kind of political/religious figure with status, and they can then use him and alter the myth. They can just reframe everything, redefine the terms, and then they stick Jesus in there, they stick Moses in there, and then they can use that.
Yeah.
And other historical Muhammads also, because I think after this archbishop, other people took the title Muhammad for themselves.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of him, maybe.
Yeah.
Could be.
100%.
You're right. And they had to squash it down to one guy and erase the history.
Yeah. And so they did
And
this.
I can't-
It's like an artificial diamond. You take carbon, rubbish carbon, and you exert a lot of pressure, and you've got a diamond.
With my wife,
Muhammad of Islam. You know how they make artificial diamonds?
I'm just thinking, would my wife know the difference, and are these diamonds cheap?
They say supposedly you can't tell the difference.
You know, because you know what they say, it's the thought that counts, you know.
Counts.
And I'm definitely
Oh gosh. Yes. Where was I? I was actually saying something. What was I saying? I can't remember. It's gone.
No, Odon was talking of multiple people that have the title that may have taken it afterwards. And then I said
Yeah.
they squashed them all into one person.
One.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were saying?
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, I think we just have to look at the oldest sources and work our way up. Because you will start to notice that, you know, I put forward that it looks and appears to be very much so Christian in the early days. You know, what we would normally classify as Islam during the Umayyad and early Abbasid period. Then it slowly transforms into it being its own religion itself. Being its own religion itself. Because it seems as though that the Christians that were engaging in these conversations with them, I have a famous quote that said, you know, Muhammad brought Christianity, brought and taught Christianity, but his followers didn't understand it. So it seems as though that, you know, early people, even John of Damascus was calling it an Ishmaelite heresy. In order for it to be an Ishmaelite heresy, it must be Christian in nature, but it's a heretical form of Christianity. So we just have to you know, really look at it from a historical lens to see when did these different shifts actually occur, in what century.
Can I mention something? You've got the Muqarriba, priest kings who serve the will of Allah, right? Allah was a term that was used even in long before Islam. Allah was a god known long before Islam, and that god was called Al-Makkah, right? The god Makkah. I mean, you can drop the Al, it's just Makkah. So Allah, Makkah, but Al-Makkah was also the god Shin of Babylon. He was the Babylonian moon god Shin, right? But then what happens is under Islam, you had the Caliphate and Khalifa, but then prior to that, you had the Amir of the Al-Muqminin, the Amir of the believers. But prior to that, you had the Muqarriba, right? The same title, just changed names. But notice, here you've got the Amir. So Amir al-Muqminin was the commander of the believers. That's a military title, right? Although he's got a religious role. Then Amir al-Muslimin became commander of the Muslims, which the Almoravids first assumed, right? And so Amir al-Muslimin is the Lord of the Muslims, which the Almoravids first took, in distinction to Amir al-Muqminin. The latter title was borne by independent dynasties, right? The Almoravids recognized the supremacy of the Abbasids and didn't wish to arrogate to themselves this title of the caliphs. So at first, the Abbasids were the Amirs of the Muqminin, the believers, and then this group, this Almoravids, he was the Amir of the Muslimin. And then eventually, to create a distinction from the generic believers, the Abbasids took the title Muslimin from the Almoravids and used that going forward to give them a distinct name and identity.
Yeah. Mu'minin is much more than believers. It's those who have given their faith to someone or to a creed. Those who have given their allegiance. So it is. It can be understood as a military term, but also as a religious one.
Yes, no, it's all. He's the warrior, priest, king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Warrior, priest, king, and apocalypse prophet.
Yep.
With his followers.
Yeah.
Well, so I would love to actually come back again. And I will definitely be in contact, and just let me know when the next slot is available, and I will be here.
Definitely.
Yeah. For sure, JC.
Yeah, let's carry on. I think now we can pin this down by looking at the north, the south, the east, the west, and
Yeah.
every single possible thing. Instead of just focusing on one region, we just throw everything at the wall, see what it sticks, and hopefully we will find out what happened some 1400 years ago.
Yeah, because finally we're doing a synthesis. I mean, Jay Smith blew the doors off this thing, right? But he was focused from 570 up and north. But now we're finally looking east, south, and west, you know?
Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
But guys, I have to go, unfortunately.
Okay, Kalam.
But I love this conversation. I love being around you guys and finally around my peers. So I can't wait to have more conversations like this.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. So guys, thank you very much. Everyone, God bless. Thank you for your time. Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.